I'm Karen Flatt from IBI Group. IBI are probably a practice you haven't heard of. And they used to be called Nightingale Associates, who specialised in healthcare design. And that's when I joined Nightingale's, which is almost 20 years ago. And at that point, when I joined, I hadn't even thought about mental health design. I wasn't a mental health design architect. But as I've worked over the last nearly 20 years, I've sort of become a specialist in this sort of niche design world, and it's something I've become very passionate about, and about improving facilities for those people who need to use mental health services. And it's becoming ever more important because business as usual is not an option. I'm sure you're all aware, it seems to be nearly every day there's new news stories about the growing problem of people experiencing mental health problems. At the moment, we think that 7 in 10 people have experienced a mental health problem, and it's just increasing. So we need to find answers about why this is happening and what we can do to access services quickly and improve people's outcomes. So we also know that people living in cities are at a higher risk of stress and mental health disorders. As it says on the screen there, depression increases by 40% and anxiety by 20%, and schizophrenia doubles, according to King's College London, if you live in a city. So on top of that, we've got physical health problems, which are also becoming more known about. One that seems to be in the news nearly every day at the moment is air pollution, which is extremely serious, as we know. So as policymakers, as politicians, architects, designers, we have to stop making places that make us sick, both physically and mentally. Countless studies and news reports have highlighted the negative impacts of modern living. And as it says on the screen, those that have the least access to nature also have the worst levels of physical health and mental well-being. So this is obviously a challenge for everyone with the increase in technology and with the many socio-economic factors that are prevalent in today's world. And it's also a really particular challenge for those people who need to be in secure accommodation because they can't necessarily just go outside for a walk when they want to, which is one of the things that might make you feel better. So we also know that the impact of nature and the positive effect it has on mental health is proven. Again, that seems to be in the news nearly every day. But what do we as designers do to enhance nature and access to open green spaces when we're designing our buildings? We can be hampered by our clients, especially if they happen to be publicly funded bodies that are constrained by budgets imposed by central government. But as it says at the top there, even the government is looking at ways that we can connect with nature to improve mental health care. There's new initiatives that seem to be announced every day about enhancing wildlife and nature. One of the recent ones that has been launched is the 5 Ways to Wellbeing initiative, which has been launched by the Wildlife Trust across the country. And this is about encouraging access to nature and outside spaces, which has been proven to improve people's mental and physical health. There's also the People's Manifesto for Wildlife, which some of you might know about if you're a fan of Chris Packham, like I am, which advocates frequent engagements with nature to become part of our regular daily diet. One of the things IBI are working on, or have been working on, is Healthy New Town. So obviously it would be best if nobody ever needed to go to a hospital, whether it was for a physical or mental problem. And one of the ways we could try and keep people out of hospitals is designing the built environment in a way that helps to do that. So the Healthy New Towns initiative is where the NHS are using land that they currently own across 10 sites in the UK to build 26,000 new homes. And the principles being that if we can plan ahead and build new communities, we can radically think about how we live and improve the health through the built environment. So this is a sketch that sort of moves. This is technology that's actually working. where we look at the landscape of a hypothetical town and things that we can do to improve and design into that town or cityscape. So we can design in allotments and memory cafes and increasing access to nature and having, good civic centres, which seem to be disappearing from our cities at the moment. They're very important for people to socialise and get out and stop loneliness if we can. And then eventually, maybe we can get out into the countryside more and enhance our well-being by getting away from a polluted city. Another initiative that has been going on recently is recovery colleges. And these are a number of places of these are happening across the country. They offer educational courses about mental health and recovery, which are designed to increase students' knowledge and skills and help them feel more confident in self-management of their own mental health and well-being. For a person with lived experience of mental health, this may help them to control and become an expert in their own well-being and recovery and move on with their life despite their mental health challenges. It's not just for students as well, it's also for people in the local community can go and use these facilities. So IBI have been designing one. These are some images of one in Liverpool that we're doing, which is a joint venture between Hugh Baird College and Merseycare, NHS Foundation Trust. So this is converting a church into a space that everybody can use and that is community friendly and community focused. And I think they have I think it said on there, about 300 courses that people can go and access. So that's trying to keep people out of hospital. What about if you're in hospital? It's very difficult to design for inpatients. It's a different challenge. We have key criteria that we obviously need to design for people who are in secure accommodation, and that security and safety are two of the paramount concerns. But we also need to make sure we're maximising light, ventilation, and also their privacy and dignity. So, as I said at the start, I've been designing mental health facilities for nearly 20 years, and I've seen a lot of good and bad examples of how people have tried to improve spaces over the years. And many times people are working on very tight budgets because it is generally for the NHS or it's a charity that are funding it. But we do need people to care. Once we've designed a building, we need people to care and look after that space. This picture here is one that I took a few years ago. It's a picture of the entrance to a ward for people with brain injuries. And this is somewhere where people will live and they will be in there for years and they can't get outside. And there's dying plants as you walk into the ward. That's what you see when you walk in. And what does that say about the care that people receive in there? And what do relatives think when they go in there? It doesn't make me feel good. Well, we talked about winning ways to well-being, or ways to well-being earlier. This is an initiative that's been around for quite a number of years, and the wildlife trusts have just taken it on board about getting outside into nature. But we also have used this for a number of years to design spaces inside a building. So the other thing, which I think somebody's going to talk about in much more detail, is about biophilia, which is the love of nature, and that focuses on us as human beings and our innate attraction to nature and natural processes. So it suggests that we have a genetic connection to the natural world built up through hundreds of thousands of years living in agrarian settings. So biophilic design is about creating good habitat for people in modern buildings and providing constructions and spaces that advance people's health, fitness and well-being. So nature can nurture us, and that's generally how people feel when they say they're outside in nature. But when we're designing buildings, we need to understand the boundaries that are created to getting outside. And if we can, it's brilliant if we can create spaces which blend the outside and the inside, liminal spaces such as verandas, canopies, sun terraces, etc., which allow people to go outside and sit in any kind of weather, experience fresh air, and they get to sit in a safe and secure environment. And it's particularly important for people in a mental health secure environment, because obviously they can't just go outside for a walk, or because they need to be safe and secure. So also when we're designing for people with mental health issues, they're generally in a building and that's their home. So we have to provide the full variety of spaces in one building to allow people to experience a normal day when they don't just have the freedom to pop down the shops or visit a cafe or go for a walk. So we need to provide the private and intimate space, which would be their bedroom, as that's their only private space in a secure unit. And they need to have full control over that environment. But then we also need to provide social spaces such as learning spaces in a public realm, which may also then include a cafe where you can go and meet other people, visitors, and other patients. So those different spaces can have a profound effect on people's mental health and their sensory perception of that space, particularly if you're anxious or you're nervous about going into new spaces. So traditionally, when we've designed for mental health, there's been the attitude that if we design in some garden spaces for the patients, then that will be what they want, and that'll probably be okay. But recently I've been working with a very forward-thinking mental health trust, and they wanted to put their patients at the centre of the design for a new medium secure unit. So that then brought a challenge to us about how could we engage with the service users or patients in a way that would get the most out of them and inform our designs. And we started the engagement with them before we'd started designing the building. So we thought the best way to do that is to start look at breaking the engagement down into different categories and do it in very small steps. We had to also engage with people with learning disabilities and people who might be on a lot of medication. So designing activities that were very simple was key, but that we would get enough information out of. So initially we programmed in 4 sessions over the design phase of the building, which is on the screen there. And the first one we did was about the external environment. So IBI were appointed, it's 5 years ago now, to design a 123-bed medium secure unit for both male and female patients. And as I said, some of them have mental illness problems and some of them have learning disabilities, and they're mixing in one unit, which is innovative in itself. Medium secure patients and services care and treat people who are at serious risk to others or themselves. So these are people that need physical security to prevent them from escaping, and generally we have a 5.2 metre high fence or a secure perimeter around the building. Some patients have either been charged or convicted of a criminal offence, and the idea is that they will move from medium secure through low secure to open and hopefully back into the community. But even in medium secure, they're generally there. The typical length of stay is 2 years. And one of the patients that attended some of the workshops that we did had been there for 8 years. So that's a long time to be in one building where you can't go outside the perimeter. So the first workshop we did was about the external environment, and we used a number of worksheets and stickers, because that seemed to be a good way of getting across the issue where some people can't read and write very well. We asked them to assess different images in different categories. So we did gardens, buildings, outdoor activities and architecture. And we asked them what they did and didn't like. what was their preference. And we had discussions about their existing building as well, asking them again what they did and didn't like in their existing building. And when we looked at the results of the engagement on architecture, because we did it across about 4 different groups over a number of months, what came back was the preferred building type was the one at the bottom, the one with the green rectangle around it, which is the curved white one. And the least preferred one was the black one, the black angular building. Might think that's surprising. However, it shouldn't have been, because human beings are hardwired to prefer curves, as Gaudi and other people have observed. Nature hates straight lines. Studies have shown that people prefer curves to straight lines, unless maybe you're an architect, because I think a lot of architects I've shown those slides to prefer the black house to the curved one. So that was useful. We also, at that same workshop, asked them what they wanted in their garden spaces and outdoor activities. And they asked for things like spaces to grow plants, so they wanted allotments, they wanted outdoor seating, they wanted plants, flowers, anything that would encourage wildlife, bird feeding, squirrel feeding, trees, and even a pond they asked for. But we designed, I think, everything in apart from the ponds, because NHS aren't keen on ponds, unfortunately. So we also, at the same time as we had that first engagement session, we needed to start thinking about a concept for the building. And the site for this building was actually on a roundabout on an NHS site, so it was actually on a circle. So in a way, it lent itself to a circular form. We did some other options with some angular buildings on this circular roundabout, and we took them back to the staff and presented them and said, which one do you prefer? And again, everybody preferred the circular one. So we ended up with a concept that was a curved form. And that's when we started designing in as many green spaces as we could, which we called the rings of recovery. And at the centre of the building, we had a recovery garden, which was then surrounded by a therapy hub, which contains all the therapy spaces, art and sensory rooms and cafe and things like that. And then every ward, because there's 8 wards in this building, every ward had its own dedicated ward garden, and then shared therapy gardens around that. And then around the outside of the building, within the secure perimeter, we have a sort of parkland, that we're calling it, and that's where people can go out under escort to experience more nature, light, air, plants, wildlife, etc. So from that concept, we had to translate that into a functioning building of 11,000 square metres, which we did. We lost some of the curves along the way, but that's for buildability issues and budget. But we did create a recognisable hierarchy and a village structure which supports the recovery of the patients. And with a circular building, the main entrance also lent itself to a curve to welcome visitors and staff into the building. So whilst we recognised the preference of the patients for the curved exterior, which is the one down the bottom there, we didn't exactly copy it, but it did go down well with the trust that we had listened to the patients and come up with something that followed their thoughts. The next workshop we did was about the internal environment, and again we went back to the patients and we asked them what are they looking for. The key points that came out of that was about their bedroom and that they wanted their own toilet and shower. Not surprising really, but the existing unit that some of the men are in, there's 10 men and they share 1 bathroom and 2 toilets between 10 of them, which is not great. They also wanted views out of the window, control over the natural ventilation in their rooms, a bed that was big enough for them with a comfy mattress, the bed positioned so it faced the TV, like in a hotel room, not so it faced the door, which is what many medium and high secure bedrooms have for security and observation reasons. So it's not great for, you as in your private space to be facing the door. And I expect everybody will want all of those things in their own bedroom. So we did design all of those things in, using mock-ups and models and marking things out on the floor. The next thing we did after we designed the physical environment was we needed to start looking at the interior design and thinking about a wayfinding and colour strategy for the building, because it is a large building. We've got eight wards. There's a lot of space for people to walk around. So we went back to the patients at the start of this and asked them how they felt about key spaces and what would make them feel good. And we used our IBI Think emotional mapping toolkit to look at this and to look at the predominant emotions in a space, and then using that data, how that might affect the colour scheme and respond to those emotions. First space we looked at was the bedroom, and we asked the patients, how would you want to feel in that space? As this is their only private space they have in the building. And the word cloud shows that most people wanted to feel safe, calm, homely, relaxed, which are all things everybody wants to feel in their bedroom. And having asked that question, we then asked them, what would make you feel that way? We asked them to think about colour, furniture, materials, etc. And this is the result of that exercise. The colours at the top that they chose were mainly calm and neutral tones, and they also asked again for ventilation, control over their lighting, a separate shower and toilet, and a more comfortable bed with sheets that fit, which they don't have at the moment, which is probably really annoying. And this is a bedroom that is a basic bedroom view. There was a link that would work to a fly round, but I can't get that to work, unfortunately, today. But if anybody wants to have a look at it, I can show you. So the idea is this is a blank canvas. It's quite a neutral space because the patients will bring in their own duvets and personal belongings, which will make it more personal for them. Another space we looked at was the cafe, which is a space they don't have in their existing building, and the results were quite different. So again, you can see on the word cloud, the thing that they wanted was a sociable space where they could feel free and positive and not feeling alone. So these are all key feelings they wanted in that cafe. But they chose very different colours, which were much more vibrant, with yellows and oranges the most common. And they also wanted a shop, some music, jukebox, vending machines. Basically, they wanted it to be like a normal cafe, ideally with normal crockery and salt and pepper on the table, which I'm not sure they're getting the normal crockery, but we are providing that space. This is another basic view, and again, I could have spun it round and shown you how that was working with the orange. Interior design. The next step we had in the process was the trust had decided what they were going to call the building, and they called it Rowan View, even though there weren't any rowan trees that they could view on the site. But they're going to plant some, apparently. So we took that concept and looked at the colours of the tree throughout the seasons and whether there was a palette we could extract from that we could use as identities for each of the wards, because we had to find 8 colours that we could use for our wayfinding. And this is how it... Oh, I think one's... No, it hasn't. No, that is 8. Yes, so that's how it's ended up. Because this is in Liverpool, this project, we also had to make sure we didn't use red and blue because of Liverpool and Everton. So we have used some muted blues and pinky rose colours, but not bright red and blue, obviously. So that was the main colour scheme for the building. And then on the next layer on top of that would be the art strategy. And we wanted to look at how patients would respond to a series of stimuli with their senses. So that's sound, touch, light, taste and smell. And the idea behind this is we could then take this information and look at, perhaps, instead of just having static art on the wall, we could maybe have some multisensory artworks and interventions at key points within the building. And so we did a number of workshops, this is very recent, so we're still looking at the data on this, but the one that we've analysed the most was the sound one. And the results of that workshop was that, I don't know if you can read that, but we played them 12 different sounds. Some of them were natural sounds like bird song, waves, rain, thunder, and then we played them things like traffic and construction noise and a clock ticking and some fire. And unsurprisingly, I think, the nature sounds came out top, with the birds the most popular amongst everybody. So there's the patients, the staff, and then everyone together. So the birds, waves, horses' hooves and wind were what the patients liked most, but the staff seemed to prefer rain and thunder to a higher degree than horses. The most negative sounds, unsurprisingly, was the traffic, construction noise, and the ticking clock, because everybody thought it was boring, which was quite interesting, because we thought some people might find that quite soothing and calming, but they didn't. So our current focus now is we're looking at that artwork strategy and looking at how we can bring the ideas that the patients have come up with into their artwork and interventions. So we're now engaging artists on that project and working closely with the Trust and their arts coordinator. We are due to complete the building in June 2020 next year, so I haven't got any photos to show you of what it looks like when it's finished, unfortunately, but that's where we are at the moment. We're very excited about what we can do inside the building with this information that we've recently got from the patients. So I'm going to leave you on the same note where we came in, if this works. And I think these are the words the patient said they felt when they heard the bird song, which hopefully you'll all feel the same. Thank you. So I hope you have a relaxing day. Thank you.